Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and this is a long one. So there's a table of contents in the show notes down below, along with all of the links to the reviews, the deals, and everything else that I mentioned where they exist. Thank you for supporting our work by making liberal use of all of them, which, by the way, don't forget, will also automatically enter you into our lighting giveaway when you purchase through B&H, our giveaway sponsor. So thanks, guys. Yeah, let's get into it. When we look back at 2018, it will be remembered, from the camera industry's perspective anyway, as the year Canon and Nikon finally released their full-frame interchangeable lens mirrorless cameras, the EOS R, Z7, and Z6. But I don't think it will be remembered as the year of one card slot. It was the year Sony finally slowed down its torrid pace of new product introductions, but not before throwing down the gauntlet in the form of the "I dare you to match the functionality at the price $2,000 do-it-all A7 III." It was the year Fujifilm sped up, taking that challenge, even if maybe it wasn't quite directed at them, by releasing their do-it-all $500 less than the A7 III, superior video specs, superior build quality, superior ergonomics, superior IAF, because it works even in continuous video, APS-C censored X-T3, and then blowing right past that with their release of the rangefinder-styled medium format GFX50R, and promise for 2019 of a 100 megapixel medium format camera with phase detect autofocus and in-body image stabilization. Oh, baby. It was the year that Zeiss re-entered the camera business with the announcement of their brilliantly conceived, but we won't really know how good it is until we have it in our hands, ZX1. And it was the year Leica, Panasonic, and Sigma announced their L-mount consortium, but hold that thought. It was the year that drones lost some of their luster, even with the arrival of the Mavic Air, which was fantastic. Gimbals lost much of their novelty, even with the arrival of the beautiful Ronin S. And computational imaging scored new wins in smartphones and pixel shifting, but lost some of its momentum as the company Light stumbled upon the harsh realities of the current state of technology with their L16. On a personal level, it was the year we did our first ever photo walk, part of the wonderful effort put on by Scott Kelby and the team at Kelby One, and we were delighted, shocked really, not only to meet so many wonderful people, well, that part didn't shock us, but to have our short video of the walk selected as the grand prize winner from among more than 18,000 entrants. So Scott and the team at Kelby One, thank you guys, which is a non-gender specific term of endearment. It was the year our YouTube audience more than doubled, again, third year in a row. Thank you again. It was the year we didn't buy any new cameras, investing instead in more glass, lighting, computing power, audio, and a pile of RAID storage. Well, okay, I did buy 2 old school film cameras and a small used digital camera for my personal work, but hold that thought too. It was the year that we launched our Good World Gone Bad and What Were You Thinking series. Because, as I say too often, yes, it's about the gear, but no, it's not about the gear, it's about the people, including conversations with legendary Magnum photographer Elliot Erwitt, Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer and dear friend Brian Smith, wonderful photographers and human beings and friends, Paul Giroux and Nino Rakicevic. Completed for now our 22-episode documentary web series, Mariner East. The year we finally attended and covered Photokina. The year we visited the Leica factory in Wetzlar. And then stood on the exact spot in town where Oscar Barnack took his first shots with the Ur Leica. Launched our Patreon page, started offering official 3BMEP swag, get it while you can. It was the year we dramatically expanded our relationships in the industry and met absolutely lovely, passionate people along the way, many of whom we now also call friends. It really is about the people. And with This said, it was the year I pushed way out of my comfort zone to shoot from a helicopter on the one hand, a classic first world problem, and shoot homeless people on the streets of New York on the other. Also, a first world problem now that I can no longer simply blot out of my consciousness. I choose to see it now, you know? On an up note, it was also the year Claudia suddenly went on a creative tear, shooting wonderful portraits here and in Europe, not giving a whit about what gear she used as long as she got the shot. How refreshing. Although, I think she has her favorites. So, settle in. Never mind how much I forgot to mention. Sorry. And apologies in advance for just about zero B-roll as we move on to our 2018 winners under tremendous deadline pressure, many of the categories for which I just made up, including these first two, what I'll call our context-setting winners. 2018, the best $10 you can spend right now, and 2018, why did I never realize this before? The honor for the first one goes to a one-month membership for Kelby One, just to see the course entitled A Day with Jay Maisel. Yeah, part of the prizes that we won was a one-year subscription, so I opened it up, searched for Jay, because although I've never met the man, he's one of my favorite photographers, and a new documentary has just been released, and bam, there he was. It's a wonderful way to gain some perspective as you watch what one of the best photographers alive today was shooting with and making money with. At the time this course was recorded, I'm guessing around 2007, 2008, give or take. A 12.3 megapixel Nikon D3 with consumer grade 70-300 f4.5 to 5.6. While you're watching, pay attention and learn how he uses continuous shooting and exposure bracketing for street work, because everyone worries about exposure, he says. And there's much more. For those of you not familiar with Mr. Maisel or his work, I suggest popping into your local library and borrowing Jay Maisel's New York, published back in 2000. For a fascinating look into the man himself and his life in New York City, please check out the brand new documentary, Jay Myself, Photography, the Bank, and Me. I'll put a link to the trailer down below. Our next winner, 2018's Why Did I Never Realize This Until Now?, comes from shooting film cameras these last few weeks. My 35mm Canon FTQL, the camera I started with, and a 6x7 Bronica GS1. And taking another look at my Leica 3A, the kind of camera, if maybe not the exact variant, I just don't know, favored at one point by Cartier-Bresson. In an age of top shutter speeds of 1/30,000th of a second or even higher, what until very recently was considered the exclusive province of high-performance strobes. It's instructive to note that the two 35mm cameras have a top shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second, while the medium format camera with leaf shutter tops out at 1/500th. So let's imagine it's 1933. The brand new Panasonic X emulsion has just been released, ASA 32, and a young Henri Cartier-Bresson loads up his Leica with a roll as he heads out the door into a sunny day. Maybe he shot with some other film that day. I don't know. But just stay with me here. The Sunny 16 rule suggests an exposure of 1/30th of a second at f16 in bright sun. But these new cameras can freeze the action, and pretty much everyone wants to do that. So Henri jacks it up to 1/60th at f11, 1/125th at f8. Maybe he stops there. f8, set it and forget it. Yeah, maybe that. Nice balance if you have a steady hand for your 35 or 50mm lens, and focus to 10 feet, anything between 8 and 14 will be sharp. All he has to do is set the focus on the lens. The depth of field scale is actually engraved there, and it is legible. Could go faster, 1/500th at 5.6, but you know what? Ever tried focusing at 3A? Ever see how dim and small that rangefinder window is? Even if it was revolutionary at the time. This year's personal aha is that the reason street photography of the 30s and 40s looks the way it does as often as it does is because the technology encouraged people to shoot that way. You couldn't shoot wide open if you wanted to, unless you had a neutral density filter or it wasn't all that bright, and it was really difficult. I can't believe I never thought of this before today. The takeaway being, we are so spoiled for choice. Next up, no pussyfooting around, my 2018 Camera of the Year award goes to not the camera I fully expected to name just a few months ago. Not the camera named that way by a number of outlets already. So, not the Sony a7 III. Instead, my pick for 2018 Camera of the Year goes to Fujifilm's X-T3. At first, this was a tough call, but suddenly, no, it wasn't. When I reviewed the full-frame, wide dynamic range, killer autofocused, advanced IBIS A7 III back in late February, early March, I said that it was pretty much an unbeatable value proposition. I called it formidable. I'll put in links to those videos down in the show notes below. Now, I stand by those assessments. Up until a few months ago, it was Camera of the Year. Yet here I am giving Camera of the Year award to a crop sensor camera without IBIS. What? How? Well, as I said earlier, better ergos, better build quality, better EVF actually, better IAF because it works in video mode, 10-bit 420 internal recording up to 60 frames per second, and again, $500 cheaper, with super high quality, dedicated crop coverage primes and at least 2 outstanding zooms, all smaller, lighter, and less expensive than the best full-frame counterparts. In other words, the X-T3 is the coming out of nowhere winner because it is a proof statement that you don't need to pay full-frame prices or live with full-frame size and weight to have outstanding image quality and performance as good, in some cases better, than full frame. Though I do wish it had IBIS. I do wish the recording limit were lifted. I do wish Fuji would take a close look at a lens lineup refresh so that the AF across all of them were truly signed and always stepless. I wish it had a flippy screen. I prefer the perspective inherent in full-frame cameras' longer focal length glass for a given field of view, the same way I prefer medium format to full frame. And I recognize that it is easier to get shallower depth of field with autofocusing lenses, which is not unimportant to me, on full frame than crop sensor cameras. The $1,600 Panasonic DG Leica 42.5mm f1.2 Nocticron, along with the Olympus, the fastest AF lens for that field of view in the Micro Four Thirds world, or Fujifilm's $900 56mm f1.2, the fastest AF lens for the same field of view in the APS-C world. Great lenses, both. Great. Are the full-frame field of view and depth of field equivalents of an 84 or 85 f2.4 and 1.8 respectively at a moment in time when Sony's $600 FE85 1.8 and Sigma's $1,100 85 1.4 art lenses have roughly equal or even superior optical performance, like when it comes to chromatic aberration, for example. Hold this thought. On the other hand, if you are willing and able to focus manually, the $800 lovely and petite Micro Four Thirds Voigtlander Nocton f0.95 has the same depth of field of view as and depth of field approaching that of the brand new, huge by comparison, yet enormously capable $2,300 autofocusing Canon RF 50mm f1.2. Yes, hold another thought. Actually, you know what? Let's not. Let's move on to our 2018 Lens of the Year. For me, this is another hotly contested category, and once again, I'm very surprised by my pick. First, I think I'll list the honorable mentions in order of ascending price, and tell you that these are my picks, even though in one case I spent no time with it, and only very limited time with another, but that's how good they are. First up, the new $850 Nikkor Z 35mm image stabilized 1.8. This lens is just super clean. It would be the very first lens I'd buy were buying into the Nikon Z system. It's big but lightweight, uber smooth. And did I mention clean? As in sparkling, crisp, beautiful color. No visible aberration of any kind on first glance, though I didn't pixel peep. I just really dug the output and the speed of the AF. Next up, the only lens with which I haven't had direct hands-on experience, but based on the fact that this is my favorite wide-angle configuration and speed, and my buds are very high on it, and I know Sony, their $1,400 24mm f1.4 G Master. Now, I love my Canon FD24 2.8 back in the day, and I've never enjoyed 28mm as much. A 4mm difference may not sound like much, and for many people it probably won't matter, but for me, the difference in the field of view, the difference in feeling, is significant. And I use shallow depth of field say what you will, often to emphasize where I want the viewer to look. This would likely be our next Sony lens purchase. Next up, Canon's new RF 50mm 1.2. No pixel peeping here either. I just love what came straight out of the camera with this lens. I love that it was autofocusing. Like the Nikon Z35 1.8, this would be the first lens I'd buy were I buying into the Canon EOS R system. Shooting wide open with a lens this fast, you need great AF. I'd buy this over the yet-to-be-released manual focus Nikon Z58 0.95 for just that reason. Last honorable mention, Fujifilm's 200mm f2. At $6,000 a pop, with a single focal length full-frame equivalent of 300mm, this is what I would call a statement lens. Faster than anything this side of Canon's legendary 200mm f1.8, which remains the most magnificent lens I've ever owned, and MTF charts that beggar belief. The only thing keeping me from naming this my lens of the year is its very narrow audience and the fact that I only peered through it at the launch event for the X-T3 rather than put it through its paces in my own time. Well, okay, cost too. If I had, it might have been lens of the year anyway. My friend Steven is the target audience for this, as he is an accredited motorsports photographer. He's been doing this kind of work for years. His photos are superb. He's invested in the Fuji system, and he can see the difference instantly, which is saying something. Which leads me to my actual pick for 2018 lens of the year, a crop sensor, variable aperture zoom lens. The image-stabilized Leica DG Vario-Elmarit 50 to 200mm f2.8 to 4. What? Yeah.
About to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for.
We've been using it for months now, and the image quality and flexibility of this lens are spectacular. Build quality, excellent. Not much bigger than Sony's FE24-105 f4, a lens we bought with our own hard cash, but with dramatically longer reach that we use. This 100 to 400 f5.6 to f8 full-frame focal length and depth of field equivalent blows it out of the water at comparable fields of view. And I didn't think that that was possible, but it was. Immediately visible, especially to Claudia, who has it camped out on our long-term Panasonic G9 loaner. It's fascinating to me that she's using it for street and environmental portrait work. It's, I think, an unorthodox choice, and yet it turns out she's in great company. J. Mazel's 70 to 300 Nikon is in the same ballpark. As it turns out, used on some of the very same streets and some of the very same neighborhoods where we most enjoy shooting in New York City. But yes, Jay was there first. But here's what makes the Vario-Elmarit a slam dunk as our 2018 lens of the year. At $1,700, it's a third less expensive than Sony's outstanding $2,500 100 to 400mm G Master, also variable aperture. Literally half the weight and size. And in the real world where we shoot, gives up virtually nothing optically. While we're talking about lenses, let's announce our 2018 surprise focal length of the year, 40mm. We were fortunate to get an early press sample of Zeiss's $1,300 40mm f2 Batis, and yet I didn't know what to make of it until I put it onto an A7 III and started shooting with it on the Highline. I mean, I grew up with 50, learned only in the last year to like 35, yet here I was with what I at first considered this no man's land 40. I think the problem was that I don't see in 40mm. I see in 50, 24, now 35, always 135 and 200. But as I warmed to it, I began to see that it offered less perspective distortion than a 35 for a given field of view, yet more in frame than a 50 for a given distance. I like this a lot. But then a couple of you recommended the $900 manual focus Voigtlander 40, and thanks to my friends at Adorama, an M-mount Voigtlander 40mm f1.2 arrived shortly thereafter. But first I made it to the Leica M10D, later the X-T3, and that's when I fell in love with the focal length and speed.
I wanna get to your clothes, gotta get it right now. push all the limits with you right now.
Perfect for my kind of shooting on the M on the street. Close enough to require interacting with the person I want to shoot, wide enough to allow upper body, face, and just enough overhead to provide context, shallow enough, even crop sensor, to intimate the city rather than have it overwhelm the subject, long enough again to show minimal perspective distortion. I think this is the first lens I'd buy for any Leica M, much more accessible and notably faster than my previous favorite, the one that I owned for years, the Summicron M35 f2 aspheric. Let's finish off our section on optics by announcing our 2018 lens adapter of the year. This may be the first and last time I have this category because it was a year in which lens adapters became critical to the future of Canon and Nikon as they once had for Sony. The good news for Nikon and Canon shooters generally is that both companies' adapters seem to work very well with legacy glass. But the brilliant one is Canon's $400 drop-in variable ND filter mount adapter A, I think. I'm guessing you can figure out why this is so important and why it's so powerful. Suddenly, a hybrid camera has built-in neutral density filters, just like dedicated video cameras. I love that. As long as you use legacy EF glass, which is not a bad thing, but you don't buy an R for legacy glass, except if you're invested in it. If I were interested in the EOS R because I had a significant collection of EF mount glass and wanted to get into video, this adapter alone might almost trump the R's icky 1.7x crop in 4K. That's just the way it is. Yes, Aperture offers the electronically variable wireless DEC Vario-ND adapter for EF lenses to MFT and Sony E-mount, but that doesn't help people with EF lenses. I just wish other manufacturers would build NDs into their hybrid cameras, full stop. Until then, this is the most elegant solution I've seen. When Canon releases an R body with no 4K crop, no line skipping or pixel binning, and adds IBIS, I bet they sell a pile of them and reinvigorate the market for used EF glass. In the meantime, Nikon, get one out just like it ASAP because you already have IBIS and full readout 4K in your Z6. Rather than hold that thought, let's move to our next category, and I admit it's an odd one, but here we go. Winner, in fact, of Best First Generation Full Frame Mirrorless Camera of the Year, the Nikon Z6. This is not unimportant. I've been playing intermittently with the Z7 and EOS R, full reviews coming, but it's the $2,000 24 megapixel Z6, $300 less than the 30 megapixel R, and just 60% of the 3400 Z7 that takes the prize for most complete and compelling camera of the three. Which, hey, in and of itself would not be sufficient reason for giving it an award. But the fact is that I like the Zs a lot. To my utter delight, I like XQD a lot, though I'd still like two of them, not for redundancy, but for rollover during long recording sessions. I'm surprised by how good SnapBridge is now, and I much prefer the Z's ergos to Sony's and Canon's. The AF may not be the same level of sorted as Sony's, Canon's, or FujiFilm's X-T3, nor Nikon's own DSLRs, but it's better than Panasonic's. It's got the IBIS that the Canon and Fuji don't. It's got the full frame that the Fuji doesn't. It has the full width readout, no crop 4K recording up to 10-bit 422 that the Canon doesn't, that the Sony doesn't. But as a hybrid, the Z6 is shaping up as so good, in fact, especially with a little seasoning, a firmware upgrade or two to improve AF, add back in dirty HDMI out for gear reviewers or educators, things like that, that I think it pushes Sony to make sure that its next full-frame camera, whatever it is, A7, S3, maybe it'll be so different an A8, will actually require a new body altogether to handle the heat dissipation demands of that 10-bit 422 sensor that they will need to be competitive, along with the new ergos required to match the Z6, let alone beat it. Does the Z6 have challenges? Sure, I've mentioned some of them, but the most important especially is the one named Panasonic Lumix S1. Hold that thought. Well, no. Again, let's not hold that thought. Speaking of the S1, let's take a step back to name our 2018 product announcement of the year and industry announcement of the year. In fact, let's do that in reverse order. So, winner of our 2018 industry announcement of the year goes to Leica, Panasonic, and Sigma for their L-mount alliance. In one fell swoop, superb camera design and unrivaled heritage from Leica meets supreme video, IBIS, darn good ergos, and tremendous value from Panasonic, and superb value-priced optics that regularly outperform original manufacturer's glass from Sigma. It's an obvious win for all three companies, a dramatic accelerant in their quest to meet and then exceed Canon, Nikon, and Sony, if they sort autofocus. I think they will. I think they have to. Which leads me to our 2018 product announcement of the year, Panasonic's full-frame S1 and S1R. This is it. This is the single most interesting camera in all of Photokina 2018. Positioned directly across from Sony's A7 III and A7R III on the one hand, and therefore Nikon's Z6 and Z7 on the other, what I saw and played with in Cologne was an almost perfect mashup of a Panasonic G9 and Leica SL. The idea of accessing Leica SL autofocus glass via more affordable bodies again on the one hand, and accessing Leica via more affordable glass on the other. And on the third hand, accessing camera design and optical performance from Panasonic and Sigma, informed by Leica, but together priced much, much more accessibly, is for someone like me terribly exciting. Hold that thought too. We have two honorable mentions. The first goes to Fujifilm's 100 megapixel phase detect autofocus and IBIS specified bigger than a GFX 50S, but don't call it GFX 100S medium format camera, also promised for 2019. The thing about whatever you want to call it is that in its specification, Fuji is tacitly, if not explicitly, recognizing the Achilles heel in the current digital medium format space. Unless you have great glass, which they already do, and perfect focus and stabilization whenever you take it off the tripod, all that sensor real estate is essentially pointless. With a price target of less than $10,000, well, that's a lot. That's too much for most of us, but still, this may do more than shake up the industry. Fuji's super full frame labeling just might stick. I kind of dig it. I think that's right. And give more than one camera manufacturer major indigestion. Our second honorable mention goes to Zeiss's ZX1. It is a brilliantly conceived device. Call it 40% full-frame camera with a fixed no-compromise autofocusing 35mm f2 lens for image capture, 40% integrated smartphone with a uniquely curved touch rear screen for image and edit and instant share to the web, and 20% industrial design that somehow manages to meld both while remaining mindful of and respectful to the too often lost essence of the exposure triangle, dedicated physical controls for aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, leaving everything else for the screen. Not a function button in sight. Thank you. We don't know how much it will cost, and there are more questions than answers, but I can't wait to try it out. Still, it is the L-mount alliance and what it pretends that lead me to announce the winner of a brand new category for 2018, eBay Deal of the Year. How did I get here? I got here because the winner is the Leica TL2. Oh yeah. Here's why. The starting point, and this is why the very first award went to A Day with Jay Maisel, is the realization that for most of us, cameras even 10 years old will get the job done. And while this is not true for our professional work here at Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and may not be true for you, it is also true for my personal work. I loved the Leica SL even without the fastest AF or full-frame 4K recording, but when all is said and done, the most important factors for not getting one were that it was more than I needed and out of reach for me financially. I loved the Leica M10P and really especially the M10D, which shocked me. Very different shooting experience, but even more pleasurable and inspiring for me, but they were also too expensive and don't allow the option of autofocus, which I imagine would be fine for me most of the time. I'd choose to use it since it would be for my personal work only, but I'd still like the option, especially if I ever decide I have the budget for very fast glass. I loved the Leica TL2 and CL, especially with the tilting VisoFlex, but while the bodies were delightful, forward-thinking and sized just right for me, and offered autofocus as well as access to M-mount manual focus lenses via adapter, even they were out of my price range. The bodies are $2,200 and $2,800 respectively, and lenses, even Leica's crop sensor TL lenses, start at $2,000 and go way, way up as you cut over to the full frame SL50, 75, and 90mm primes, because primes are where it's at, baby. In any case, except for the Summilux TL3514, all of Leica's TL line of crop sensor autofocus lenses are too slow for my preferred style of shooting anyway. But what about used? What will happen to used prices when Sigma starts offering lenses like its 16mm and 30mm 1.4 crop coverage lenses in L mount? I can imagine the price of used T, TL, and TL2s rising. Or going down when Sigma starts selling Foveon-based L mount bodies. Tough to say. But what's clear is that no one is giving away the CL on eBay. On the other hand, the original 16-megapixel T, body only, is $500 a pop. Recent TL sales, they're also 16 megapixels, are averaging $800 or so. But sales on eBay of the 24-megapixel TL2 are averaging between $1,300 and $1,400. More expensive, but just about $1,000 off of new. And I love this camera. Think about this, getting into a current generation 24-megapixel interchangeable lens digital Leica with enough money to snag a robust, fast, manual focusing lens with personality. Say the Voigtlander 35 1.4 MC or 40mm 1.2 for less than $2,000. I'd say that makes the TL2 worthy of title eBay Deal of the Year. We've got another Deal of the Year award along with audio, lighting, app, and more. But before we do, I want to share with you the winner of our last camera category, our 2018 Sleeper Camera of the Year. That award goes to the Panasonic G9. In my experience, best IBIS in the industry. Pixel shifting that works really well and that the GH5 doesn't have. Better color, better EVF, and another best in the industry at the moment other than Leica's 4.4 million dot EVF in the SL. Slightly better ergonomics and slightly better autofocus than the GH5. But the G9 still manages to share with its older, more video-centric sibling internal 4K recording up to 60 frames per second, built-in mic and headphone jack, high-capacity battery, and the option of a really nice battery grip. Okay, it only records at 10 bits. I'm fine with that. Only up to 30 minutes. And it doesn't work with the XLR mic adapter. I'll survive. And yes, as I've said elsewhere, it is more difficult to get the shallowest depth of field with micro four thirds, and it will not perform as well in low light as the A7 III, ISO for ISO, aperture for aperture, nominally. Depth of field for depth of field, however, and you may be surprised by how close they actually are. But the net of it is this: as a stills camera or B-roll video camera, it is just outstanding. If the IAF and tracking in stills are not quite as good as the A7 IIIs, they're still lightning fast and one of the best in the business. And I remain one of those people who believes that the latest micro four thirds cameras are more than most of us need. Unfortunately for the G9 and Fujifilm's X-H1, hold that thought, it was overshadowed almost immediately after launch by Sony's A7 III. A shame, really. The ergos and build quality of the G9 are much better than the Sony. Ditto the IBIS and EVF, a 3.7 million dot variable magnification unit up to 0.83x. When the G9 launched in January, it was priced at $1,700. The competition was rough, and now it's selling for $1,300. On that basis alone, basically only 3/4 of what it used to cost, it would qualify as a deal of the year. But I wanted to call it out on its own. It's that well-rounded and that good a camera. Okay, let's speed things up so that we can get to the most important award of all, our third annual Elephant. First, our 2018 Audio Gear of the Year award is actually a piece of software that goes to the latest version of Izotope RX, now version 7. If you need to take noise out of your audio, and who doesn't, this is the package to get, full stop. The only time you'll hear noise in my videos anymore is when I either forget or I'm too pressed for time to use it, or don't use headphones. It's a staple in our workflow. 2018 Recording Monitor of the Year, the Atomos Ninja 5. I just published a review of the Ninja 5 a couple of days ago, so again, I'll put the link down in the show notes below. But the bottom line is, it is a Goldilocks solution for the hybrid shooters Atomos targeted, designed specifically for the Nikon Z, Canon EOS R, and Fujifilm X-T3. Think of it as a smaller, lighter, cheaper version of the Ninja Inferno, or, if you prefer, a heavier, same size though, roughly, brighter, modestly more expensive monitor and recorder than the monitor-only FOCOS. If you want to get the highest video quality possible from these cameras, this is the recorder with which to do it. 2018 App of the Year, FOCOS, F-O-C-O-S. FOCOS is $1 a month or $7 a year or $11 lifetime purchase app on the App Store for iPhones. Maybe it's available on Android, I don't know. That essentially mimics, though frankly I don't know which came first, the latest version of Apple's camera app with variable bokeh and a host of other computationally rich photo tools. If you want to understand where we're heading, spend a couple of bucks and give it a go, even if you don't have the latest iPhone. 2018's most intriguing lighting gear of the year, ANTHEM 1. After a really interesting conversation with Evansworks founder and president Justin Evans, I've just received the ANTHEM 1 light for review, ergo the category title. Interesting enough to get it, but I haven't used it yet. However, in the coming weeks, I'll be wrapping my head around this unique, beautifully designed, interchangeable chip on board, $1,500 5.5-inch cube, which purports to have 25,000 lumens on tap. It reminds me of nothing so much as Steve Jobs' next computer, and it also comes with a unique graphic novel style, not instruction manual, but really origin story. Very clever, very funny, very creative. Stay tuned. 2018 Workhorse Gear of the Year. This is a three-way tie. This is another I just made it up now category, and I want to acknowledge gear that has become indispensable as a staple of our daily workflow. This is stuff where the specs no longer matter, the price no longer matters, no buyer's remorse. All that matters is that it does what we need reliably, faithfully, simply every day. Stuff we couldn't live without, stuff that we have no interest in replacing or upgrading. Gear, in other words, that has stood the test of time. First up, the Panasonic GH5. You know the autofocus is middling at best. We don't care because we bought it knowing that any autofocus system, having had the experience of any autofocus system becoming unpredictable in live interview and conversation settings, which is how we intended to use the camera. In other words, we bought it assuming we'd focus manually anyway. Now, over the last year and a half of almost daily use for our YouTube channel, commercial and documentary work, image quality at base ISO, which is where you want to shoot, has been stellar. Ergos are excellent. Still's autofocus performance is excellent. IBIS is class leading second only to its stablemate, the G9. The EVF is excellent. The XLR mic adapter is great. The twisty screen with touch interface works, even if I don't love the menu system. Unlimited recording across 2 card slots serially has been utterly reliable and critically useful. With the second firmware update, the video autofocus has become consistent enough that I prefer it to manual focus for taking these kinds of talking headshots. I'm using it right now. Although the GH5 launched at $2,000, that's how much we paid for it the day it became available. I've seen it just this weekend for $1,400. 21 months on, the GH5 continues to impress, and I should have labeled that a deal of the year. Next, Sigma's 30mm f1.4 for the GH5. This is the lens we use most often here in the Batcave, typically at f2.2 to 2.5. It simply performs way, way beyond its very modest price point. I'm still not sure if the Leica DG25 1.4 would work better than the Sigma with the DFD AF system, but Sigma works well enough and gives away nothing optically with even better chromatic aberration correction. At just under $350, it's a steal and should be one of the first lenses you get for Micro Four Thirds. Finally, Sennheiser's AVX wireless lav has become our standard. Using the same super low maintenance plug-and-play frequency hopping technology as the Rodelink Filmmakers Kit, which we love, but operating in a less crowded part of the spectrum, the AVX system is at once significantly smaller yet much more robust, including the mic cable. You pay for that quality, just about double, but time and again it's proven its worth. The Sony UWP, good alternative. Okay, we've got one more award before we get to the elephant, and that's our 2018 Deal of the Year. These are deep discounts on excellent products that when they first hit the market were incredibly well received, earned the accolades, but now, in an era of what I'll call sick quick, product life cycles are already becoming dated. We're talking a minimum of 20% off, new in box with factory warranty. With so much happening this year, it's a 5-way tie. So, first, excellent news that the crazy Sony a7 II deal with kit lens for $999 is back. Again, I'll put links down below to the 2 videos I did last week because I was so blown away by the 50% price reduction that I felt you guys had to at least know about it and decide whether it made sense for you or not. Second, Sony's flagship A9, with the best autofocus I've ever seen on a camera for sports, is now selling for $1,000 less than it was a week ago. At $3,500, that's 22% off the most current camera in their lineup. Well, actually, that's the A7 III. Third, I loved the FujiFilm X-T2 when I tested it back in 2007. I'll put a link down to that review in the show notes because of its fantastic ergonomics, image quality, glass, and reasonable prices. With all the new cameras out there, including its successor, the X-T3, the X-T2's price has dropped $500 since I recorded that review. It's now $1,100, a 31% savings. If you're a photographer only, there's not much separating the X-T2 from the X-T3. Other than price, your game. Go get it. Fourth, Nikon D750, $1,400, 30% off its most recent price, a whopping 40% off its launch price back in 2014. Now, I've never had one in hand, but DxO, even today, ranks its sensor as number 15 in its entire database. If you've ever wanted to get into the Nikon system via new in-box full-frame DSLR, if mirrorless doesn't speak to you, if you don't do a lot of video, this just might be the way to go. Fifth, lastly, the one lens that ticks off more boxes than any other in the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem, the image-stabilized Leica Nocticron 42.5mm f1.2, is currently selling at $1,200. This is the lowest price I've ever seen, a 25% savings over what I saw it for last time I looked. Honorable mentions. 1. Sony a7R II. This camera's sensor blew me away when I attended the launch event in New York City just a few years ago, as did the fact that it also had IBIS and a price to match, $3,200. It's now on sale for $1,600, a 20% savings over the price just a few days ago and a whopping 50% off the price so many people have happily paid since launch. 2. Canon 5D Mark IV. This is the latest version of what for 5 years was my workhorse camera, the 5D Mark II. Fantastic build quality and ergonomics as long as you don't care about dials. 4K video as long as you don't care about crop or Kodak. What can I say? Bottom line, it remains a superb workhorse photographer's camera. It launched just 2+ years ago at $3,500 body only and held that price until very recently. With battery grip, it's now on sale at $2,800, 15% off the price of a few days ago, just about 30% off the price it commanded for years. 3. Sony a7R III. I think of this camera as the pinnacle of the current Sony line because I prioritize resolution over speed, and it's no slouch. It is the camera most appealing to me because along with that resolution, it has significant operational upgrades common to all third-generation bodies, improved IBIS, improved battery, tweaks and ergos, 3.7 million EVF that the A7 III doesn't have. It's on sale now at $2,800, 12.5% off. Last honorable mention, Fujifilm's X-H1. This camera surprised the heck out of me when I reviewed it because I found I actually preferred it in hand to the X-T2, which I loved. Tremendous build quality, sublime shutter, the only way to get IBIS in the X series lineup, sporting not only a more robust body, but a strengthened lens mount to handle the new 200mm f2. Like the G9, it had the unfortunate timing of being released at just about $2,000, shortly before the full-frame Sony a7 III came out at the same price. Fuji dropped the price shortly thereafter to $1,649, where it remains during this holiday shopping madness. It is a great camera. Okay, yes, here we go. Finally, last but not least, the moment, well, I don't know about you, but for me, definitely the moment I have been waiting for, the announcement of our 3rd annual Elephant Award winner. The idea behind the Elephant Award is to find and recognize the one imaging example truest to the founding principles of Three Blind Men and an Elephant, our production company, a commitment to curiosity in pursuit of understanding what it is that we're seeing. That is, trying to move from subjective truth to objective truth. If you're not already familiar with it, I encourage you to Google the Three Blind Men and an Elephant parable, for which our company is named. Put differently, as I keep saying, yes, it's about the gear, but no, it's not about the gear. It's about the people. It's about getting to those fundamental truths through the collaborative, constructive application of creativity, technology, and moral conscience. Ultimately, it's about the value of and need for multiple perspectives and humility in holding any one of them and comparing them in service of getting to what is real. Our inaugural award went to the civilian drone pilots at Standing Rock, North Dakota, part of the larger community movement camped there, where it became clear for the rest of us not there to see, because of their aerial footage, that what was happening on the ground was not what local law enforcement, local government, local and national media, and energy transfer partners said it was. Last year, our award went to the 500,000 men and women who used their smartphones to capture footage, a subset of them, on the ground at the Women's March in Washington, D.C., to show once again that the accepted narrative was not what actually happened there. You want to talk about three blind men trying to discern the truth? Try tens of thousands of sighted people among the hundreds of thousands there with video-enabled, social media-connected smartphones streaming live. This was incredible. This year, the award winner is someone whose name I didn't know even a week ago, and his connection to imaging technology is oblique. But before I announce, I want to be clear. This is not about politics, at least not my politics, though I do have a very specific point of view, which I share elsewhere, but about the power of imaging technology to help us understand what we're seeing. The winner is Judge Timothy Kelly, who just ordered the White House to restore correspondent Jim Acosta's press credentials. In this instance, I'm awarding this year's elephant to Judge Kelly because his ruling told the most powerful person on earth, the President of the United States, that he does not have the right to essentially blind a man trying to understand what he's seeing and determined to share what he learns. What makes this story even more interesting to me is the doctored footage purported to show Mr. Acosta accosting a White House intern and the basis for the revocation of his credentials. Fortunately, a number of video editors picked up on this immediately and shared the conclusion that the footage was doctored and showed precisely how it was. It absolutely was. In this, I believe we saw on the one hand proof once again how powerful imagery is, the degree to which human beings know that and therefore often try to control what other people see, and on the other, the power of the intelligence of the community and the importance of working together to ensure those efforts fail. The free flow of information. Judge Kelly, thank you. And with that, thanks to all of our industry friends literally around the globe who helped us this past year by providing gear for review, logistical and technical support, used your good offices to help us grow, broke bread with us, commiserated with us, and reminded us weekly that there are many good, interesting, and creative people in this world. Most of all, I want to thank you, dear Three Blind Men and an Elephant viewers, for your incredible kindness, generosity, humor, thoughtful commentary, and very real support for what we do on the web and in person. From the bottom of our hearts, Claudia and I, thank you. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, join the conversation in the comments section below. You guys are just so sharp and so generous. Just wow. Share, create a playlist, consider supporting our work by using our no-cost to you affiliate links down below, or making a contribution directly via the PayPal link down below. As always, we thank you for it. For Three Blind Men and an Elephant, I'm Hugh Brownstein. See you next time.